Hello and welcome to the Female Founder Friday podcast with me, Lindsay White. I'm passionate about helping female entrepreneurs be great leaders, build high-performing teams, and create inspiring workplace cultures through innovative talent, programs, and practices. Because when people feel like they belong at work, they deliver their very best and businesses thrive. The Female Founder Friday podcast is all about connecting with the most incredible female entrepreneurs to talk about their journey to creating their own business, the mistakes they've made along the way, and how they view their own leadership. In this third season of the podcast, we're going to take that one step further. I'm challenging all of my guests this season to take my leadership style quiz. And at the end of each episode, we're going to be digging into their leadership style and how it impacts the way they lead in their life and their business. If you're interested in learning more about your leadership style and want some of my top tips, you can take the quiz right now. Just check out the show notes or head over to highvoltageleadership.ca, click on the button at the top of the page that says take the quiz. Then you can share your results, connect with the guests, and enjoy the conversation on Instagram by following me at highvoltleadership. My guest on this week's episode is Amoris Walker. Amoris has had a really colorful journey, from singing in the family band to traveling the world as a documentary filmmaker, to founding Hot Tea Media, and now is the author of the children's book, You, Me, and the Trees. Amoris has combined all of her adventures and all of her learnings into a beautiful business where she helps other female founders tell their story. And she really approaches this with an incredible deep empathy, a passion for storytelling, and a real desire to help other entrepreneurs embrace their journey and the beauty of discovery. Hey, I have a great guest today on the podcast. I have Amoris Walker with me, and I'm super excited to dig in to this conversation with you, because I know you have a really interesting background. You've had a really interesting journey to becoming a female founder. So welcome, and I can't wait to hear all about this.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here and to find out more about you and all of the amazing people you have worked with along the way and that you're helping and supporting. It's just, I love what you're doing. I'm on board with all of it, and I'm just really excited to be here and chat with you today.
Love it. You are here for it. I love that. I love that. Awesome. Well, we're going to start with you though. Tell us about your journey to becoming a female founder.
That is such an excellent question. And the answer is I am still on that journey every single day. Yeah. I know you agree with me. You know, I've read a little bit about your journey, and I think that we are just continuously learning how to be who we are as businesswomen, as parents, as friends, wives, daughters, and combine all of that together. And for me, the journey has been to try and figure out how to make it all work cohesively. And the work-family balance is really something that I'm focused on right now, because I have an almost 3-year-old daughter. And that is the biggest challenge, honestly, is trying to make it all work together peacefully. And it doesn't always turn out, but boy, you can sure try. And there are so many things I've learned, even in the last 3 years, that have helped me to be a better mom and business person. And so my journey is on continuing right now. It's every second of every day is different.
You know, and such a great point that we are always on the continuum, right? Like there is always something new to learn. There is always something around the next corner. And we are always evolving as humans, right? And being a businesswoman, being a leader is just one of those roles that we play. But I'd love to hear about, where kind of how you got to today, like what you've done a lot of different stuff, and it's pretty cool. So tell us about some of that.
Yes, I have led several different lifetimes, I feel like, in the last 41 years. I started off as a small child in a family band with my parents and brother, our last name being Walker, and our environmental focus in the band, so we named ourselves the Earth Walkers. And we
Ah,
traveled all over the country and did shows for schools and churches and all kinds of organizations, veterans groups and hospitals, primarily schools for a long time. And our focus was really teaching kids about how to protect their habitats, where they live, their homes around them, their home states, that kind of thing, how to protect the animals that lived where they were, how to cut up, plastic before you recycle it, all of these things that now are so commonplace in our language. Back then in the early 90s were still pretty controversial, and started there. And then the rest of my journey went into a little bit of acting, and then I went to the other side of the camera, started doing video production, editing, started two of my own video production companies over the years, and then a digital marketing company where I focused on social media as well as video production. And then somewhere in there, I traveled around the world a lot, and I worked for iHeartRadio and iHeartMedia. So I worked for some radio stations in Portland and Seattle. So I've had corporate jobs, and I've been an entrepreneur,
yeah.
and just about everything in between. I've been a cocktail server. I've been a manager of a restaurant, coffee shops. I have done it all. In fact, currently on the weekends, I work at a winery here in my town, mostly
Nice.
because I like the discount.
Yeah.
No, the truth
I
is,
will
it's
work
just,
for wine.
yeah.
Not a bumper stick, like will, honk if you, yeah,
Yep. Yeah. All of those things.
100% down with
And
that.
it was during the pandemic, and I felt a lot of my work was kind of changing a lot because we were all in flux, right? So
Yeah.
I took this part-time job to do marketing for the winery, ended up pouring wine in the tasting room, and enjoyed it so much that I've been there now for 2 years, but just a couple days a week, just almost like I don't know, it's just like to step me out of everything else that I'm doing. And I get to meet the most incredible people. And
Yeah.
I've learned a ton. I work for an incredible family winery, and I've learned so much about regenerative agriculture. So honestly, it all comes full circle for me.
Yeah.
I just published my children's book, You and Me and the Trees. And
Yes.
so all of it really does come back to caring for the planet. For everything that I've done in all my different careers, there's always seemed to be this theme of learning about taking care of the earth and our habitats, and also learning how to teach that to everyone around me. And now, most importantly, teaching my daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the book. I haven't had a chance to read it, but it looks like a lovely, lovely book.
Yeah. I think I need to send you a copy. So
Oh, yes.
I'm so proud of it because it took me about 4 years from start to finish to get it done. And anybody who is working and a parent and also just trying to have a life, or keep a marriage together, or take care of elderly parents, knows that trying to get a side project done is just really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So I got it done, and with the help of a Kickstarter, with the help of an amazing illustrator that I hired to work with me. And I'm so proud of how it turned out in terms of the quality, and in terms of the reception it's been getting has been so positive that honestly it chokes me up when I think about it, because
Yeah.
I've done something that is touching other people in a way that feels really, really good. And man, that is, there's a quote that I love, by Maya Angelou. It's I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And children's books make people feel something. I don't care how old you are.
Yeah.
If you have a favorite children's book from your childhood, it's because it made you feel something so deeply that you never forgot it. And
Yes.
I hope that this
Yeah.
book has that effect on people.
Yeah.
So it's been a dream of mine to publish for so long, and I'm hoping that's my next career. But oh my gosh, you never know. You just never know what's going to happen.
I love that. I want to say um that I really love how you connect all the dots, and you're like, yeah, it just all kind of comes all the way back to where you started with the family band, and really talking about how we can take care of our environments. And I think that's really beautiful. And now bringing that to a new generation of kids who are growing up in a very different world than we grew up in, right? They're growing up in a very different space.
Yeah, I mean, before we started the podcast, you and I were just chatting about some 80s films and how great some of the films were in the 80s. And nowadays, like, you can't put so many things in films. I mean, there's pros and cons to that, but uh, our kids are growing up in a different space. And then with the last 2 years and the pandemic, not to mention what's happening with the metaverse and social media,
Yeah.
I am challenged, and we all are challenged, to allow our children to have roots and wings, right? That's what my parents
Yeah.
did for me. They inspired me and supported me, and then they let me go. But they kept a little bit of a leash on me because I still have
Sure.
to text them when I get home every night, even though I'm 41. Um, but nowadays, I make them text me. I say, "Are you home from the store
Right.
yet?"
Right.
Okay, good. I got. But we're challenged to teach our children all of the things that they need to know to survive and protect them from this bizarre world that we are living in. And on top of all of that, we are living in the only time in history where we have to know about everything that's happening all the time. And I don't mean we have to as in we're seeking it out. I mean we are inundated with it
Bombarded. Yeah.
constantly. And I've been having this conversation recently with folks about how I'd say this is the hardest time in history. And they're like, pish posh, it's been harder in other times. You don't have it so bad, privilege, yada, yada. And I'm like, you're right. But just hear me out. There's a war in the Ukraine right now. There's a couple of pandemics going on. There's multiple other things going, natural disasters, children starving to death, homelessness in our own communities, on, right? And it's not just happening in the one place where you are, it's happening everywhere all the
Yeah.
time. And we have to hear about it. So if you were in a war zone and you didn't have the internet, you would literally be fighting or flighting. You would be dealing with your family, taking care of yourself. If
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we are expected to go to our jobs or run our businesses, raise our kids, have sex with our partners, be in love with life, be positive, and we're in the middle of a war zone because we know that other people are suffering
Yeah. And
horrendously
we see
all
it
the time.
all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
So the challenge is, like, how do we stay centered knowing that the world has all of this bad and plenty of good? Believe me, I'm definitely a glass three quarters full type of person.
Yeah.
It's usually three quarters full of something like a good Pinot Noir. But I am a positive person, and yet I feel kind of like an empath too. So it's really challenging to feel things so deeply about what's going on in the world and also try to be positive about it.
Yeah. You know what? I think it's a really valid point. And you're right. Are there, every age has its difficulties, right?
Yep.
Every generation has its huge challenges. But we are certainly in an age that, these things have never happened before. And you're right. We all participate in them all the time.
Right.
Globally, 9 billion of us,
Yeah.
right? I think one of the biggest challenges, of course, working a lot with female business owners, female founders, how do we stay focused? You're right, on what we need to do to grow our business, what we need to do to stay sane as our own human, and what we need to do to look after our family and our loved ones, because we've got three real big buckets. But also, how are we approaching the conversations? So for many of
Yeah.
the women I work with, they have teams. How are we approaching those conversations with our teams so that they have a space to come and say, like, I am experiencing real anxiety with all of the stuff flying around?
Mhm.
To your point, how are we approaching that with our kids? How are we helping and supporting and loving on our partner and our
Mhm.
friends and our sisters without absorbing and intaking all of that? Because that's, sometimes the issue is we absorb a lot, and who do we get help from? Where's our space to
Mhm.
go and have that conversation? Who's holding us up?
Mm.
And I think I hear that a lot. One of my colleagues is a mental health professional, and she actually posted on LinkedIn today and said, if you do not have a space, I will be your space. I am offering 30 minutes of my time to whoever needs it. No obligation and no charge, because everybody needs some space. With all of these things that are happening, we're all carrying a lot. And especially when we're, also trying to keep a business afloat.
Right.
Trying to support our families with the money that we make, trying to help others support their families because they got to make money too. It's a lot.
And because I think most women want to give back so desperately, we want to give back to our communities. We want to, we don't want to see houselessness. We don't want to see children struggling with mental health crisis or drug addiction. We don't want to see these things happening in our families or in our community and friends' families. Yeah. So we're being challenged pretty deeply, but women are incredibly powerful. And I know you know this, or else you wouldn't be doing exactly what you're doing right now, which is providing an opportunity and a place for women to talk about these things, which for many years have been not talked about. It's not okay to talk about mental health. It's not, yada, yada, yada. Forget that. That time is over. It's okay to talk about it all. This is an open space. You say what you need to say, how you need to say it. I mean, in that you be mindful of other people, right? I'm learning from my own personal coach and counselor how to be mindful of my words and be have integrity with what I say, not just spouting off. I tend to talk a lot. And sometimes I really have to reel it in and say, did you say what you mean? And do you mean what you say? Right. It's such an old adage, but words are powerful. And like you said, we're manifesting everything by just continuing to talk about it. So are we going to keep the conversation good and positive and powerful in a way that will raise the vibration? Or are we going to keep talking about all the bad stuff? It's hard. Let's just take a second and agree that this is really hard.
And you know what? I actually think it's really important to acknowledge that. And if you're listening to this episode, I want you to take a moment and acknowledge that, you're experiencing some really, really difficult, really traumatic things in your world. And that is okay. That is okay to feel that. Because I think sometimes we feel like we need to be strong and brave and powerful and all of these things. It is okay to acknowledge, I'm struggling. This is hard. That's okay. And you're going to be all right. But it is okay to admit that.
I wouldn't want it any other way, because there is nothing that has come into my business life or any part of my life, honestly, that hasn't come with struggles that have made it better in the long run. And if we were sitting here saying we're okay with this, I would be worried. If these listeners right now are like, no, I'm totally fine with everything that's happening, I'd be like, either you have something really figured out, or I'm worried, because we have to be feeling this right now in order to get through it. Right? Like with childbirth, there is no way out but through. And that is with everything in life, whether you're birthing a business, a relationship, anything. And going back to what you were saying about teams working together and being good coaches and counselors and being supportive of the folks that we work with and for and around. I think something that's really important, that's becoming more of a cool sort of thing, is breath work, team building exercises. And I don't mean like the old school cheesy ones, although those can be fun too. I mean, I've been seeing CEOs take their people out and do like Wim Hof style ice bath, breath work, kind of team building weekends. And I'm going, oh my God, this is amazing, because you are creating a place where people can be with the people they work with every day. And be vulnerable and be humans and heal together. Because in our workplaces, often we find so much strife. And I think particularly women, for so many generations, we've been sexually harassed and we've been paid less, and we're still being paid less. There's all of these levels of heartache in our work, our everyday lives. Even if you work for yourself as a female entrepreneur, I can't tell you how many times I've been passed up for somebody with less experience because it was a dude. Right.
And we get less funding, right? We get less support for our organizations. We get, we have less access to capital. You're right. Whether we work in organizations or we work for ourselves, we're still climbing the hill. There's absolutely no doubt.
And women of color are treated even worse in ways that I am ashamed that we can't figure out a way to be inclusive of everybody, all women, all men. And anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
I think, just to land the point, you're right. I think lots of organizations are truly finding interesting, innovative, and unique ways to connect, to create cultures where being open and vulnerable is okay. In fact, it's expected. It's safe. I mean, ultimately you have to have incredible psychological safety. People have to feel like they belong
Yes.
in order to be that way. What I would add to that conversation is that going on a weekend retreat with your team is great. What's even more impactful is what you do when you get back onto the office on Monday, and what you do
Yes.
for every Monday after that. Because that's what I have seen is well-intentioned organizations, whether they're corporate or they're small businesses, well-intentioned organizations. Let's do something really cool. Let's spend some time together. And then we get back into the office on Monday and we go back to the same behaviors. And if we really want that change to stick, if we really want it to become integrated in our culture, then we absolutely have to change the way we behave going forward. We can't just leave it at the resort or leave it in the conference room or, leave it wherever, right?
Yeah.
And those are the organizations. They shift the behavior in the moment, and then they make the transformation last. And that's what's truly impactful in organizations.
Wow. Let's just take a second and let that sink in. If you're listening to this, take a deep breath,
Yeah.
because that was really well said.
Thank you.
You hit the nail on the head, and it makes me think of, I listen to books a lot. I've been listening to The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck, and she has a quote that's, peace is your home, integrity is the way to it, and everything you long for will meet you there.
Yeah.
And that can be brought into your workplace, that can be brought into your home, that could be just your center.
Yeah.
But that integrity, like you're saying, you've got to go back on Monday and you got to continue the integrity of your decision to take your team out and do something cool like that. Bring them back and make sure you stick with it every day, all day, even when it gets hard. And
Yes.
another great one, Glennon Doyle, saying, we can do hard things. We absolutely can do hard things.
Yeah.
We have babies, we raise babies. That is the hardest thing there is, in my humble opinion.
For sure. There's no doubt. Being a mom is the hardest job.
But the most rewarding, but also, again, the hardest things often are the most challenging. And I honestly, you said it all. I'm not going to say anything else on that, because I think you really nailed it on the head. That was beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and you've kind of alluded to it already through the conversation, but I'd love to ask you, where have you screwed it up, messed it up, use whatever language you want? And what have you learned from some of those moments?
I have never fucked anything up in my whole life. Ever. I am perfect. I hope my mom's not listening to this, because she'd say, well, you just said the F word on a podcast. And I'd say, yes, I did. Sorry, Mom. Yeah, I've screwed up. Often I think it's going back to integrity. This is why it's a theme in my life, trying to figure out how to have integrity and be really honest with my language. I struggle with it every day. I say things that I shouldn't say in my own head and to people I love. But that integrity is because somebody told me once, you have really high expectations of people, and they're going to, pretty much everybody in your life is going to disappoint you. And I was like, oh, what? That's terrible. But that person was correct. I've been disappointed by things. And I think that I expect more from people. So it's been hard in running my own company and in hiring people. I've made mistakes in hiring certain people. I've made interesting choices in taking on clients. It's, like I said earlier, it's just all a learning process.
It is.
I'm trying to think of a specific example that could be like a learning moment, but I really think it's just about believing in yourself. And maybe the biggest fuck up of my life was not believing that I could do it. And it took me so long to believe in myself and know that I was capable of doing those hard things and standing up for myself. And often women who are leaders or feel like they want to be in charge of something are called bossy and all of that. I was called all of those things. There's 100% that,
Bossy, pushy,
yeah,
uh,
bitchy.
bitchy.
Yeah. Are you on your
Yeah,
period this week? Like,
yeah,
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 everything you can do, I can do
yeah,
bleeding. That's
yeah.
another incredible essay any woman should read. This woman wrote about a wonderful poem essay about that. And, all the language that goes into talking about women and what they are capable of doing. God, I remember when Trump said something about that woman being on her period. And I just thought, great, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how she's up there. And even if she is on her period and she's cranky, she's up there doing exactly what you're doing
Yeah.
while losing 7 gallons of blood.
You'd be in the fetal position. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Let's bring that to the conversation. Like, women are just so freaking cool and powerful. Let's talk about it.
yeah, yeah. But you're right. I think so. Two things. It's interesting because yes, absolutely. I think there are very few women that I've encountered, whether working in a corporate environment or now working with small business owners, who have not at some point in the past or currently had issues with their confidence level and managing that. I call it the saboteur. That's a very coach like word, or the inner critic, or the imposter syndrome. It's so much more than that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
managing that negative internal conversation, that is universal. And it's not just female, it's male too, but our conversation is different. So yes, 100%, I think that is always an issue. And then, the second thing you sort of brought up is, and I hear this over and over again, some of the biggest mistakes I've made in my business have been around people I hired, people I worked with, people I didn't work with, right? Like
choosing some bad relationships, like boyfriends or girlfriends over a job, choosing even those kind of relationships can impact. You
yeah,
say, oh, but it's going to be okay. But no, that person sabotaged your dreams. Forget about that.
it happens. It happens. Or, whether it's, I didn't hire soon enough. I was doing a workshop yesterday helping solopreneurs really
Yes.
understand when is the right time, and how to do, hiring really effectively, so that we don't let some of our own bias get in the way. But, half of them, they haven't hired soon enough. They're already frantic. They're already overwhelmed. They're already feeling burnt out.
You know
The
what
other
I think
half,
is,
their confidence levels getting the best of them. Well, I don't know if I can do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. What
Oh,
I was going to say is, I think women have a hard time delegating. I know I do. I struggle with being able to put something in somebody else's hands that I want to see done a certain way.
yeah.
And I every day now I get to do it when my child wants to do something and I know it's going to end up being a mess, but like, she has to learn. So I have to delegate certain things and let her try. It's been an incredible learning curve. But women delegating, and I think that comes down to what you're talking about, being able to hire and choose people we trust, is probably mostly, I would say, a lot of fear in that we're going to be disappointed or they're not going to do it the way we want. And that's on us. That's on us supporting and coaching, going back exactly to what you're talking about with um, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you are on it with the things that you promised at that retreat, or what you promised within your
Yeah.
community guidelines at your work,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that delegating is very difficult, and that goes right into hiring. I've
It does.
always had trouble figuring out how to hire the right people.
And what I would tell you is that underneath all of that is that you don't trust yourself. You don't feel confident that you can properly train someone. You don't feel confident you have the ability to find the right person, that you have the ability to delegate, to communicate your vision. You don't have the confidence that you can articulate the directions.
Right.
Like, ultimately, it's not about I can't find someone. It's about do I have what it takes? Right? That's what I find very interesting, is it really comes back to our own self-awareness and all our own self-confidence.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and take it one step further, that I think that we maybe also are fearful of learning something from somebody else.
Sometimes
Sometimes
that
it
is
feels like
absolutely.
if I bring in somebody who has a different kind of qualification, they might try to take my position, or they might try to, and women have
Or they
been
might tell me I'm not as smart as I would like to think I am.
totally. And
Right?
honestly, I hope that they do. That has been some of the
Yes.
best learning experiences of my life, is when somebody has blown me away. And what I've tried to learn in my
Yeah.
old wise age is that we women should not be competing with each other. I mean, we
No.
are competing for jobs. Definitely. There's that. There's healthy competition. But when I see another woman succeed now, I am like, yeah, girl, you
Yeah.
get it. Where can we have a champagne party?
Yeah, totally.
Immediately. Like, I am not sitting there like I was in my 20s going, oh, she got ahead already. She got the job that I
Yeah.
wanted, and we've all done that. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that I'm the only bad one here.
No, no, you're right. I mean, we've all had well, some of us more than a moment where it's like,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
yes, we women have a lot more power when we work together. That is, one of our super strengths is being collaborative and being connected. And it really is true that when we do that, we lift each other up.
Yes.
We all get better. We all get more opportunities. We all get access to more capital and more training and more together. Right. So I love that. I love that a lot. Um, I'm going to ask Amoris next about her leadership style. And although she's a solopreneur, I mean, we know that we don't just lead in our business. I mean, you've talked very openly about how you lead your little one. But if you haven't had a chance to take the leadership style quiz yet, you can do that right now. You can find out what your leadership style is. The link's in the show notes. You can also go to highvoltageleadership.ca and you can take the quiz there, and you can find out what your leadership style is and follow along a little bit. So I think you said, what did you tell me you thought your leadership style was? Was it coaching? Or was it support?
I would say honestly, it's a little bit of all. I think that coaching is only very recently come into my life. Like I said
Interesting.
early on, it was direction. I mean, because I did video
Sure.
production, and a lot of
Yeah.
it was about, I know how to do this from start to finish, and we're going to get it done.
Yeah.
Delegation was also very difficult for me to learn, and
Yeah.
I'm learning that now. So I'd say delegation and coaching came in most recently, and it would have been more direction was the majority of my early career.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I love that it's kind of a continuum,
Oh
because
yeah.
actually I think that that's exactly what it is. Don't you?
Yeah, and I think there's an arc for each one, depending on what kinds of projects you're working on. When
Sure.
you're in college, it's one thing. When you're in grad school, it's another thing. When you're working at a coffee shop, it's one thing. So it can all change depending on where you're at and who you're working with and for. And I would say definitely for those listening, go take this quiz. I mean, she's offering you a wonderful opportunity here to find out more about yourself, and there's always room to grow and find
Totally.
out more about how you could be better. It's kind of like learning your love language. And once you learn it and you know what you really desire to be happy, I think if you find out your style, your business style, you can maybe hone in on that more and find a little bit more joy in what you do, because you're speaking your love language, right?
That, you know what? I think that that's a great point. And the opposite of that is you can explore the other styles that maybe you're not as comfortable in, because you're right. Sometimes we have to be a more directive leader,
Yes.
especially if we're working with someone who is new to the business, new to the organization. Maybe they're a new professional. Maybe they are a recent grad. We have to be more directive in that space. When we have a more developed, more seasoned team, then we need to be able to delegate more effectively. Or maybe we're leading a leader, then we really need to embrace that coaching style of leadership. They don't need us to tell them what to do. They need
Yes.
us to ask them great questions and then say, now you go figure it out. You know what you're doing. So
Yes.
I think, there is this philosophy of adaptive leadership, being able to embrace different styles in different spaces, and not just in our business, but also in our personal life, right? Because there's moments where you got to be directive with your 3-year-old. Hang up your coat.
Yeah.
Then there's moments when you can be coaching. What do you think you should be doing right now?
And try to do these with my 3-year-old and not my husband.
Yeah. But I mean, we lead in every relationship. We have the
Yes.
opportunity to lead in every relationship and in every aspect of our life. And so I think your point is really well taken. If you know who you are as a leader, if you're really clear about how you want to show up, well, then you're just going to find more success and more joy in all of your interactions.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And I think to say not to be afraid to find out what you can learn from others, like you just said, be curious, ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
Some of the best experiences I've had, like on a video shoot or traveling it with, a documentary film crew and whatnot, is when I am stuck in a place where I feel like I have to do everything or I don't know how to delegate. And I ask somebody, well, what would you do right now? And they say, well, I would shoot it from this angle and do da 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 da. And I'm like, well, that might not be so you just kind of caught off guard. Like, that's a fantastic idea. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah,
because
right.
We can't think of everything. We cannot be the only ones creating beautiful work, and accepting that, immediately accept that right now, because your entire career is going to be based on you saying, I accept the fact that I am not the only one who can do this. There's always going to be younger and better and hungrier than me. And that is okay. We want that, and we want that challenge, and we can learn from them. And my 3-year-old is one example, but anybody that I've worked with who's been younger than me, or less experienced, even older folks who are less experienced, but they want to learn something, like social media, which I taught for some time. You can learn so much. They say, well, why don't you try it this way? And I go, I had not thought of that. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. We're going to learn something together. So being observant in those situations, having curiosity, and then having patience to follow through with that. Those 3 words are on my dashboard every day: observe, curiosity, patience. I should write down also, sometimes you should just shut the fuck up, which is what my therapist would say. But seriously, it's so helpful.
That. I think you're right. When we can, so one of the programs that I run is called Positive Intelligence. And I talk about it a lot because
I just love that name. Can I just say that is just, I love that.
It's pretty wonderful stuff. And I'll tell you, it's really powerful work. It's based on a book by 𝐭𝐡𝐢𝐬𝐬 of that same name. And it was work that I came to as a coach in the pandemic when, I was feeling particularly disconnected, depressed, traumatized. It was dark and cold and yucky here in Canada at the time. And the work of positive intelligence and really shifting from that negative, sort of saboteur space into the positive, focused, energized stage space, and really then being able to find the gift or the opportunity in every situation. So instead of looking at it like somebody just showed me up, this old guy that I'm teaching social media to, he just made me look like an idiot. No, actually, the sage perspective is, wow, I just got to learn something. I got my mind blown today. I got to make a shift. And now I have a new perspective. That when we move forward from that kind of positive space, positive energy, with curiosity and being able to explore, there is so much more possible. Much more possible. And that is what we need as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, to be able to keep going in these, little businesses that we're trying to build.
Yes, absolutely. You said it all. I mean, that's just
brilliant.
It was so challenging for me in my young work years, and it's gotten easier and easier and easier because I just started to accept it. That if someone makes a fool out of you, that's fine. It's okay to be made a fool out of every once in a while. I recently had an experience at work where one of the ladies I worked with at the winery kind of came in and started doing something on the iPad while I was doing it, and in front of a client, and I pulled her aside afterwards, and I was like, don't do that again. If you want to correct me, that is 100% fine. I'm just going to ask you not to do it in front of these clients, because I've been here a lot longer. I don't want to, I'll be happy to say, if I don't know the answer to something, I will say, you know what? I have no idea what year that wine is or what grape it is. I've never heard of that one. I'll go Google it, or I'll go ask somebody. But it's different when somebody kind of shows you up. And after the conversation with her, what I realized is she thought she was being really helpful, and she wasn't trying to step on any toes. So it was great to have that open communication with her. And, honestly, I was nervous about confronting her about it. But even though I've been on stage and I've sung in front of audiences and I've published a book and I can talk in front of people, I got nervous to confront somebody about something that I didn't want to have to confront. So nerves happen. It's okay. But the communication is important. And I'm really glad I ended up having that conversation with her so we could clarify it.
Yeah. And I think what you've brought up is something that is really important. And again, whether it's in our own business or in our life, it is absolutely in integrity to have that bold conversation with someone. And we shy away from it because in our culture, conflict is a dirty word, right? It is a dirty, nasty word, and it means somebody's going to get hurt. There's going to be blood. And in all reality, conflict does not have to be negative. In fact, it can be a really positive catalyst for change.
Absolutely.
But it's all about how you approach it. And when you approach it from a place of, it is important that we have this conversation. We are going to talk about something here. We're going to come out of this with some sort of collaborative, creative solution. That is the way you can approach that kind of challenging or difficult conversation and get the very best out of it. And it sounds like you managed it absolutely beautifully. And didn't you come to a wonderful space in your relationship with that person?
I think I had to check this is another thing I'm working on right now for a number of relationships is motive. And, most of us think we have good motives, but you really have to like clarify that when you're going to go into a confrontation with somebody. And so I kind of took a day or two to think about, what's my motive? Is this going to affect us in a negative way? Is it even worth talking about? And it had happened a couple of times. So I really did think about it and try to get my headspace into my motive is that I want to be able to work with this person and not feel hackles, when something happens. I want to I want to be able to have a really nice working relationship. And so, I think exactly what you just said. And then add on to that, the having a good intention, good motive, and going back to the integrity, in Martha's book, The Way of Integrity, her whole book is about not lying. So how many times in a day do we say little lies just to protect somebody's ego or because we're afraid of confrontation? And I would challenge everybody listening to go a day or two and just see how many times you maybe don't say any lies for a day or two and see how many times you're having to hold back. Because I think a lot of times we are unfortunately lying to everybody in our lives,
including and most importantly ourselves. I mean,
ourselves.
When we say something like, "Oh, it's okay. It's okay."
Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, it's
not okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm fine. That is like, that's the big lie right now, right? I'm fine. And I have said for a couple of years now, don't ask me how I am if you don't give the real answer.
Yes.
Right?
When people say, "How are you?" I go,
yourself. You're lying to yourself because you're saying I'm fine. And in your head, the response is, that's bullshit. I'm not fine.
Yeah.
I'm losing it. I'm right on the verge of a complete nervous breakdown, but I'm telling everybody around me I'm fine. How is that serving you?
I need a granola bar and a pedicure. That's what I need. Do you really want? No, I mean, it's like asking me how I'm doing. And I say the same thing, kind of similar to you. I say, "Are you sure that you want to have this conversation right now?
Do we have time for this?" Yeah.
And when I am doing good, in fact, somebody said to me the other day, they said, "How are you doing?" And I kind of hesitated because I didn't know this person very well. And I was like, I was on having one of those days and I sort of hesitated. She goes, "Well, that didn't sound good." And I'm like, okay, so I took a deep breath to answer you honestly. And you're afraid that didn't sound good. I was just literally deciding if I was going to tell you the whole truth or just say, today is a hard day for me, but I am working through it. And that is an honest answer.
Yeah.
It might not be I don't have to tell her my whole life story.
No.
But the fact that she was kind of taken aback, like, "Oh, you must not be good if you had to sigh." And I'm like, well, deep breathing is actually pretty damn good for you. So maybe you should try it sometime.
Right? I love it. Amoris, I could literally talk to you all afternoon. We clearly have so many ideas and concepts in common. I really love that. It's been absolutely an honor to have you as part of the show today. We're going to put a link to your book because it just sounds wonderful. And just something beautiful to share with the kids in your life. And you've given so much great wisdom here for the female founders that listen to the show. So thank you. Thank you so much for all your time, all your passion and energy, and just wonderful creative thoughts today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I'd love to come up to Calgary and like have a charcuterie board with you and talk for hours.
100%.
If you don't mind, could I read one little part of my book to end this on?
Yes, I would love
It's
that.
actually
Please.
the last page, which I normally don't like to give away, but in this case, I think that all the ladies out there and mamas out there and entrepreneurs out there
Love it.
would appreciate this.
Yes.
It says, "You'll drift off to sleep without a worry in sight. Your dreams will be sweet as Mother Earth holds you tight." So I want you all tonight, when you go to sleep, remember that Mother Earth is holding all of us and holding space for all of us, and we can do this. We can do hard things together.
I love it. That totally just brought tears to my eyes. That was really, really beautiful and such a wonderful way to end today's episode. Thank you again.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. And if you did enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor? Would you give the episode a 5-star review and share it with all of your friends? I would really appreciate that. I've got a goal to impact 1,000 female founders, and with your help, we can really amplify this message. Thanks again for being a part of the show, and don't forget to connect with me and all of my guests on Instagram at High Volt Leadership. We'll see you next Friday.